You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
I'm Katrina, and I love anime.
I'm Steven, and I'm aware of anime.
But what if that affection could rub off?
Perhaps that excitement in her eyes got me curious.
I could offer up some solid anime.
I could give them a watch, just to see what all the fuss is about.
And maybe, just maybe,
I could learn to love anime too.
Welcome to Inspired by a Weeaboo. Hello everyone and welcome back to Inspired by a Weeaboo. I am your host Katrina and with me is my husband Steven.
Hello.
We just finished episode 18 of Fullmetal Alchemist. Steven, what did you think?
Well, we're getting back into the meat and potatoes of the show where things are starting to get back on track, I guess, from what we would consider fillers. But again, I argue against that those last two were full-fledged fillers, like that one about the cat burglar. Mm-hmm. And at least that's what I consider her. But we open strong with Lust searching around the library in which the brothers are supposed to be going to, only to be encountered by Scar. Mm-hmm. And he seemed to recognize her in some aspect, but they didn't go into great detail about that. So they just kind of left that hanging, and they kind of confront one another. He mentions something about Ed, and she's like, no, we have to keep him alive, because he's needed. And he's like, oh, so you're using him? And she's like, yeah. And then that's when Gluttony shows up and tries to attack. And now in the scene, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it now because I don't really feel like it does anything outside of the ordinary. I feel like they could have just played this at the beginning, but it's a good stinger to kind of get you started because they technically cut away about the time Gluttony and Scar were going at one another, but they went into full-blown fight. Scar blew Gluttony's arm off, which I was like, all right. And then Lust kind of gets involved. She has some like needle fingers. Just ching.
Her fingers, all of them extend and they can get like really, really long. They can almost be like fluid, but they're sharp, like super duper sharp.
So they all kind of have a tussle, and before you know it, they burn down the library. Yay!
Yeah.
So, they didn't find what they were after and then just took everything down with it, or so it seems. So once Ed and Al get back, they are immediately given a security detail the moment they come back because Scar had been in town. It's well known. And obviously they learn about the library and they're like, well, shit. Now the one thing that they came to find is now possibly gone. So it's like, what now? And then we kind of cut away to Hughes talking to Mustang. First of all, gloating on his lovely little daughter. Oh my God, she's so cute. And then they get into serious mode, which again, I love how there's that dial that turns with him. He's like, 1 minute he's here, and then he's like, but now I'm going to take it serious for a minute. Yeah. And then they talk about they did know that Scar, or are pretty confident Scar was responsible for the library burning. Now, they don't know all the details, but based on the investigation, they know someone else was there. They just don't know who. So I'm glad that now that there's some understanding that there might be more to it. But again, I know it's not a huge clue, but knowing that someone else was there, that Scar wasn't alone, I feel like gives, especially Hughes, something to kind of keep in the back of his head to be like, just there's something else going on. It wasn't just him being an arsonist burning down this library for no reason, because if you really break it down to that, what reason would he have?
Exactly.
Because it's not like he knew of them wanting to go to the library, but for what? And I feel like his understanding would be, well, if they needed to go there, what are they going there for? And even in that regard, if he's just out to kill Ed, then what he's going for is not even important. It's just waiting there for him to get there and just knowing where he's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's not about the library. It was just a matter of, I know he's going to be here.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully Hughes kind of puts 2 and 2 together on that as well in his investigation. So now they're aware of that. And there's also rumors circulating about Mustang that he maybe possibly, was it that people are thinking that he maybe had something to do with the Brigadier General?
No, that because of the Brigadier General being killed, that he might be coming back to Central. Because remember, they sent Mustang and his group away from Central because of Scar. But because the Brigadier, because they, lost one of their higher ups, the rumors are that Mustang might be coming back. Gotcha. But like Hugh said, he also heard rumors that Mustang is the one who started that rumor. So,
yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. They didn't dwell on that too much. It was just kind of laying, again, some more seeds for later episodes. So the brothers, they go to the library. They look, they're trying to see if they can't find some possibility that Marco's book is still out there, because they talked to a librarian. There were a few books that did make it out unscathed, or at least barely burned or just kind of dusted up. And the librarian says it's a possibility it could be checked out, but there's no guarantee, because the book, the records of who checked what out had also been destroyed. So it's anybody's guess at that point. So she can't guarantee anything. But they mention the librarian that Ed had met previously, who seemed like a nothing character. And by God, they swung her back in. And she was a former librarian. And I say former because they fired her for reading too many books and not doing her job. And I mean, as a librarian, I don't know what more you would do other than just put up books and catalog them and whatnot. But I guess she wasn't doing that well enough and was spending more time reading than doing the actual librarian work. So I guess I kind of get it. But they go to her house to see if maybe she would remember and kind of have any recollection of this. And they get there, and her house is a house of books. It's just nothing but books.
Yes.
And she's buried alive in her books. And they have to rescue her from her books. And they ask her about it, see if she remembers anything about it. And obviously she does, because as we learn, she has a very photographic memory. She can tell you any and everything that she's read up and down. So based on the things that she says, because she tells them where the book was, which is in the back of the library, and they're just like, well, shit, now we know it's gone, because there's just no way we can get it back. But then Ed has an idea. He's like, aha, I'll just go and I'll transmute the entire library back to existence. And not thinking about...
Well, all the ashes of the books back into the books.
So that, and obviously it was at that point we saw a little wind gust blow by, just blow some shit away. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if that's going to work, buddy. I mean, it was a good idea. And even the security detail were like, oh yeah, wow, you can do that. That'd be really cool. And it would have been cool, but you got to have all the missing pieces.
Yeah.
So there's a little problem with that. So it was a good idea, but Cheska, once they kind of return to her, she mentions that photographic memory she has. And she read that book, and she could transcribe everything that she read in the book. And it seems a little far-fetched, but I've seen people who can remember a date and time decades ago, and everything that they did. So it's not impossible. And it's still, for the life of me, just boggles my mind that some people out there can do that. Like if you said, what were you doing on this day at this time? And they could tell you every detail. Yeah,
the whole idea of photographic memory, I feel like that is one of those things like I always wished I had.
It's like a legit superpower.
It is a legit superpower. Like that, and those, like, kind of off topic, but that and those people who, not in the sense of like counting cards, but where they take it to like a whole new level where they can do that shit in like an instant. Watch the thing with what's his name? Host of Family Feud. in Celebrity Feud.
Oh, Steve Harvey?
Yeah, Steve Harvey. Yeah. And it was like the Little Geniuses or something like, it's one of those shows where, you know, they put children in the spotlight. And there was this little girl, and they had like 5 people sitting around the table, and she just took one glance at the deck, just flipped through the deck one time, sat on the table. They passed out all the cards, and she literally knew who had each single card in the deck, knew which other cards would be drawn from the deck. She had a photographic memory and could remember where every single one of those cards, and not only where they were, but like where they were in their, like the hand that they were holding. Like, it was ridiculous. And Steve Harvey was just like mind blown. Of course, he made the joke of, you know, he's going to take her to Vegas.
But yeah,
but just that idea, like, that is a legit freaking superpower. And I have always wished that I had it.
I mean, it really makes you wonder how their brain operates, because I feel like I have, as far as memories go, I think I was even talking to you about this the other day, is I never forget a face. I can guarantee you, if I've seen your face and I know it and I've looked at it long enough, I'll remember it. I might not remember your name, but I know I've seen you. And that I wouldn't say is anywhere near this level. Oh, no. But it's something. So if I can do that, but then they can take it a step further. Oh, yeah. Like, how does your brain operate to that level to where it's immediate? Right. Like, you know exactly what something is. And it's just, I can't fathom it. It's just, it's amazing, especially other people who have similar things. Like, I know they usually attribute it to autism, but where you can see something and count it like in an instant, like your brain just can count a bunch of toothpicks on the ground. Yeah. And okay, I don't get it. I don't understand how your brain operates like that. And it fascinates me to no end.
It does. So, like I don't even know, like the human brain is so fascinating anyway. But with that, and especially, you know, when she tells them about it and everything, and it always just kind of seemed one of those, like, that's kind of weird. Not in the sense of her having a photographic memory, but the whole, why didn't you come forward with it? Yeah. And then when she says, like, she was picked on and everything for it, and then Al gives her those comforting words of, like, you know, you're amazing. Like, this is your gift. This is how you help people. And it's beautiful and amazing. And, you know, you're awesome. And it just made her feel good. And it's one of those things I feel like people could take away from it. If you are somebody who has this, you know, amazing ability, just know that you are utterly freaking amazing. Yeah.
I mean, don't ever let anyone make you feel like a freak or something like that.
No, you are a super freaking hero, like 100%. You go and do you, and you do the best you possible. You're absolutely just mind-blowingly amazing. Yeah,
at least in our minds.
Yes.
Everyone else can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so when she mentioned she can rewrite the book, they're just like, well, have at it. And she does. She writes everything up in these, you know, these big documents. She's got stacks of papers everywhere. And when they start thumbing through it, it reads like a cookbook.
No, and it is a cookbook.
They're confused by it because it's like, are you sure you wrote the thing?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, this is the book. And obviously she should know. She remembers. So luckily Ed trusts that this is the book because he's like, no, there has to be a reason. And obviously why wouldn't it be done in such a way? Like he said, he coded it. Yeah. So it's not, you know, the regular passerby, if they just happen to pick up the book and read it, they're like, oh, it's a cookbook. Exactly. But for those who are seeking it, they know what they're looking for, and he knows what he's looking for. So he knows they just need to take a moment and decipher what he was trying to say in the cookbook, and they can figure out what his secrets are.
Yep.
As they decide to retire to another library, that's when the security detail, at least the one, seemed more adamant about it than others. Lieutenant Roz, I think was her name. She was absolutely just like, nope, can't do it. We got to do this somewhere else because Scar's still after you. And Ed's like, I don't really give a damn, you know, and it moves along. And she seems bothered by this because they did I didn't even mention that when they first met them, they immediately saw Al and said, "You're Fullmetal. It's nice to meet you." It just kind of deflated Ed. But again, he said, "I'm used to it. Doesn't matter. Whatever." Yeah. And they did this weird thing, and they did it with several times in the episode where they had like this purple haze over them when they were having those moments.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting artistic choice.
That's one of those things that I don't think we've really talked about, but they don't really do in Akira as far as like the over the top kind of exaggeration on emotions. They don't do that. Like if you watch a lot of animes, if somebody's kind of like, you know, put off, or when something happens and you're kind of like, like in the sense of them mistaking Alphonse for Ed. If you notice, Major Armstrong and Al had like the little sweat droplets. And then, of course, Ed had like the little purple haze thing. Those are just to, I guess, kind of like...
It's an animation tactic to kind of reflect the emotions they're going through.
Exactly. And that's something that you'll definitely see with most of the animes that I watch have those types of things. Like you get the angry and it gets the little, you know, anime style throbbing
vein,
vein type thing.
But I think that wouldn't have worked in Akira because of the subject matter and the way it was. Because this is a little bit more lighthearted at times, and I feel like for these types of shows and animes, it works. But for something a little bit more serious like Akira, it would seem off. Like it just doesn't belong.
I mean, like they did the veins popping, but they look like actual veins.
Yeah,
popping.
like there was. It wasn't an artistic style to showcase emotions in different manners. So anyway, they go to the library. They start trying to decode what they can. Hughes drops by, and he's all about seeing how they're doing and how everything's going. Then the Lieutenant Roz comes in to state her case to Hughes because he is a higher ranking officer and feels like she can get through to him. She'll agree, or he'll agree, and then they'll get moved because she is, I give her credit, she's trying to do her job. She's on security details. She's trying to keep them safe, and they're not listening.
Well,
or at least that's the way it comes off. And you're going to tell me there's more to it than that?
No.
Taking everything at face value.
That is true. Like, they're not listening. But I feel like you also have to look at it from the point they are basically over her. Edward is a higher ranking officer, or higher ranking in the military than she is, and she's treating him like a child, which he is a child, but you can't really treat him like a kid anymore. It'd be like a 16-year-old who's drafted into the army. A regular person or a police officer or whatever has no right to sit there and make them feel less than just because they're younger. Just because you want to view them as a child doesn't mean that they're not on equal or, higher than you, which he is. So it's kind of like she's treating him like a kid, and Ed's like, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want to do. This is my job. Yeah. That's what he tells her. Your job is to protect me. That's your problem. My problem is finding the Philosopher's Stone.
Sure. And Hughes even kind of points this out to her because she kind of pulls him aside at one point and she's like, hey, I'm trying to do my job and they're not listening to me and they're just kids. And it's like you said, he turns it around on him. He's like, you don't really seem to understand who you're dealing with. Yeah. Like the stuff that they've done, the things that they've seen. It's like you don't need to look at them like children. And he kind of lays it out to her point blank. It's like, you got to see them differently, than what your two narrow eyes are looking at here. So applause to Hughes.
To let them do what they need to do, because like he says, as adults, it's your job to enable them. It's your job to make it safe for them to do what they're doing. It's your job to protect them. So you let them do what they need to do and you do your job. And her problem is she was overstepping. Yeah. She literally went over or tried to go over Edward's head just to get her way. And that's fucked up.
Yeah. But when they were having that conversation with Hughes about, moving the security detail and whatnot, he mentioned that he didn't have the need or could not spare any extra men to help with the security detail because they were still trying to rummage through some of the library files and they lost some stuff and couldn't deal with that. So then that's when Ed whips out, like, well, you know, Cheska. And then pretty much gets her a job back with, or I guess more with the military, not just with the library, but
she will literally be like, she's basically going to be like Major Hughes's, like directly under Hughes. She's going to work personally with Hughes. So,
and obviously she read some classified documents, but she could recreate them.
She literally read the entire fucking library. Like,
so they kind of task her with that. Now she has a purpose again. She has a job. She's showing that her gift is going to pay off. So good for her.
Yes.
And around that time, we get that flashback to Scar and seeing what happened with him at the library. But then getting back to where he is now, after all that, he has apparently been found and taken in by an Ishbalian refugee camp, I guess would be the best way to put it.
I wouldn't really call it a refugee camp because it's not so much like somebody made it. It's kind of like
where
they are now kind of nomadic in a sense. So he was rescued by his own people and taken to their home for the time being.
And the old man that he spoke to, well aware of who he was, because they've seen the wanted posters, and he's like, you ain't got to worry about us because we're not going to rat you out.
Yep.
So, yeah, it was kind of nice of him, but I kind of feel like I'd also want to know somebody's motives regardless. Just, I mean, again, not to judge, just to be like, yeah, but you did kill some people, yes. You know,
I'm sure the old man understands exactly why Scar did what he did.
Yeah, and fair point. So, the other revelation, we kind of get two, and I guess we'll stick with Scar for a minute. So, at the end of the episode, Scar mentions his tattoo was given to him by his brother.
Yes.
And he said it was so he wouldn't forget. Was that what he said?
Yes.
And I guess we'll get more details about that later.
Yes,
okay.
Which Scar has mentioned several times. I'm guessing you just didn't catch it, but he has mentioned before that arm was given to him by his brother.
I guess maybe I have, or maybe I mentioned it and I've just forgotten. See, I don't have the photographic memory. But yeah, so I'm a little curious about that. Plus the fact that he continued to have this flash of a woman who looked a lot like Lust that he was remembering. But they never really went anywhere with it beyond this one shot of them standing on a hillside next to a tree. That's it.
Well, her and somebody else standing on the hillside because the man standing there was not Scar.
Okay. So, but there's something about her that is faintly familiar that he feels like he knows her. So we'll get into that, I'm sure, later on. But the one big revelation that we learned from Ed is he apparently deciphers everything.
There was actually two revelations in this. I'm surprised you didn't bring up the other one.
Oh, well then maybe I forgot. So
did you not hear what Scar said what lust and gluttony are?
Homunculi. I did, yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah. What about that?
Well, the doctor had talked about homunculi before.
That's right, he did.
And you now know what the sins are. Lust and gluttony and envy are all homunculi.
Yeah, help me out here.
You'll get more.
Okay. But yeah, I do remember him mentioning it. What specifically did he say about them?
That they are basically supposed to be like soulless puppets.
Okay.
They are constructs of alchemy that's gone wrong.
Okay. That adds a little wrinkle now I'm thinking about it. All right. Well, then I'll set that aside. I won't ask any more questions because I think I'm curious. All right. So, but no, Ed learns that the final ingredient it was for the stone, right?
Yes. Yeah, how to make the true philosopher's stone.
Is you needed human beings.
Human sacrifices. Not one. They don't say how many yet.
He just said human beings.
Human sacrifices. Yes.
And Lieutenant Roz overheard that.
Yes.
And she seemed a little taken aback by it, but...
I mean, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, I mean, that that puts a hell of a wrinkle in his plan, because if you can't have it unless you
how are you
sacrifice...
going to make it unless you kill people?
Right. So now he's in a bit of a quandary. What do you do? Because are you going to sacrifice people? And if you do, how are you going to justify that to yourself?
Yep.
That I feel like that's a Pandora's box you don't need to open. And I'm curious to see how Ed's going to justify this in his head, or at least attempt to. And
the bigger question is, how did the doctor make his?
Oh, good point. Now, but if they're fake and they're not the true Philosopher's Stone, then I feel like that would be the one element he's lacking.
But we just know that the ones that he has made since he was in the military have been fakes. And that the ones that the military used were possibly fakes. But he knows how to make a real Philosopher's Stone. And the question is has he ever made one before?
Very true. I'm going to say yes.
I mean, we obviously know that the Philosopher's Stone, the true or a true version of the Philosopher's Stone, because obviously you would assume that you can make multiple as long as you're willing to sacrifice people. But we know it had to exist at one point. People know about it. The military knows about it. Although a lot of people view it as an old wives' tale, enough people know that it's something that is tangible and you can have your hands on.
Now, see, I feel like if I'm going to say the Brigadier General specifically would have known this, he would have used Ishbalans to make that happen, and could have been the whole goal behind it in the first place. And I'm probably right. Since you're giggling.
I have a really bad poker face, people.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, all right. So that's an interesting wrinkle. So I'm okay. All right. Well, I won't say
there's
much more. There's
still a lot more to the story.
Oh, yeah. Obviously,
you have
there's still like 40 episodes.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, as far as like the connections you're making and the conclusions that you're coming to, there is still so much left of this story. And with the Philosopher's Stone in general, not only, obviously now we know how you make it or what it takes to make it, but just more questions on all of it.
Sure. Okay. Well, I mean, that's all I got. I'm curious to see where the story goes, especially with these new revelations. And
it's just going to ramp up from here, yo.
Hey, that's what I like. I don't want it to be a letdown by the time we get to the end.
I know there's still going to be a few episodes that are going to be lighthearted. I cannot wait. Some of the episodes specifically that I can't wait for is when you meet the teacher. Because they keep talking about her, and you saw like a glimpse of her, but you have not met her. And she is one of my other favorite characters. And when you learn more about her story, it's another one of those that is heartbreaking and will definitely hit home. But it's also like, it just obviously adds more to the story. More shit's going to get unwrinkled.
Okay. Well, we're going to iron it out later as we go along.
Yes.
And I said 40 episodes. All right, we're probably closer down to 30 at this point, but still.
Something like that. We're almost halfway there.
Yeah.
Almost.
We're getting there. And that's all I got.
All right. Well, we have no more to talk about for this episode, so we're going to jump into episode 19. So, Steven, why don't you take us out?
Well, as usual, tell all your friends to listen to us on their favorite podcasting platform. Listen to episodes early on patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions, and keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/inspiredweeaboo. Links are down below.
All right, my little weebs. We will see you next time.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.